Hey folks, let's make some crows. You're going to see highlights from the stitching and assembly of these soft sculptured crow figures. Your instructions document has more details and tips, but at least with this video you can see some of the trickier bits. I know that's useful for all of us visual types. This tutorial works for both the sewing pattern and the in the hoop designs for embroidery machines. Down at the bottom of the video screen you'll see this tutorial is divided into chapters, so you can rewatch or skip to your heart's desire. I'm going to blow through the steps pretty quickly because I know you want to get started, but also down at the bottom of the screen you'll find the settings button and you can slow down or speed up the pace. This section is only for embroidery machines. If you are using the sewing pattern, you can skip this section or just watch and see how cool it is. For the embroidery machine, we'll start with the bird body, and that arrow shows you the direction of stretch for the fabric. You place the first piece over and then stitch color 2 for the tack down, and that's going to give you the eye, a leg mark, and a wing. If you have the flying crow, it's going to have a straight line instead of that curved line, and it won't have the leg mark on the flying crow. And then you take your other piece of fabric, right side down this time, stretchy in the same direction as before, and just cover those lines up again and stitch the seams on your machine. For the wings, the standing wing has 2 in 1 hooping. The flying wing is only 1 per hooping, so you have to do it twice. And we're going to flip the hoop over and put the fabric on the bottom of the hoop, and we're going to tape that in place so that it doesn't move when we're stitching. This is the bobbin side of the hoop. And make sure your tape is not where the stitches are going to be. That's the same as the placement line you stitched. Going to put the stiffener in the wings, just position them kind of in the middle there. And we're taking our other piece of fabric and just place that on top. Again, right side up. We're going to want to see the right side of the fabric on both the top and the bottom because this won't be turned later. There's a tack down stitch, and that's just to make sure that your fabric didn't get folded over and stitched into that line there. And then you put it on your machine and it does the quilting details. Pretty cool, huh? This section is for the sewing pattern. If you have an embroidery machine with a 5x7 hoop or larger, you don't need to do the steps in this section because your machine will do all of that for you. But if you just have a sewing machine, here's how you do it. If you're stitching this with your sewing machine, go ahead and trace all of the templates onto some lightweight tearaway stabilizer. This is all in your directions. You'll have 2 wings, a left and right, plus a tail and a body. And to make the sandwiches, you have your body right sides together, and then you pin the template on top. When you're done, you should have 2 wings, a left and a right, plus the tail, and the wings and tail have that stiffener inside. The body has nothing inside, it's right sides together, while the wings and tail are wrong sides together with the stiffener in the middle. Over on the sewing machine, the body is very simple. You just start at one end of the seam, go to the other end. But on the wings and the tail, just go ahead and stitch over those lines you traced. You want to let the machine do the pushing and pulling. Don't do that yourself. You just steer left and right like a steering wheel. Going around all the curves, there's going to be a lot of pivots. Just take your time, be patient with this, and kind of get into a meditative state with it. Your stitching doesn't have to be perfect. Your crow wings and tail will look great even if it's not perfect. If you know how to do free motion embroidery or quilting, you can certainly do that instead. This is just a regular sewing machine with I got a clear presser foot on there. Gently tear away the stabilizer from the crow body. Make sure if you did this on the embroidery machine, don't take those, there's stitches that show the wing and eye placement. Be careful with those. And then turn it right side out. If you use the sewing pattern or even the embroidery pattern, if your stitches came out, here's how you can go ahead and mark the wing, the eye, and the leg. Just take your paper pattern that came with your directions and then use a chalk or something like that to go ahead and put your marks on there. You can do this on one side or both sides of the body. It's up to you. It's just to get a general idea. That's for the standing crow. The flying crow just has a single line, and then you take all the stabilizer off of your wings and tail. If you did this on the sewing machine, it's kind of tedious. You have to get all of those little bits out, but it's not bad. If you use the right stabilizer, this should tear away pretty easily, and then any little bits left over, you might need tweezers to pull out. On the embroidery machine, your stabilizer is sandwiched in between the two layers, so it's actually much easier to pull that away. One of the benefits of having an embroidery machine. For the wings and tail, just cut them out about 1/8 of an inch away from the quilting lines. You can get as detailed or just round it off. It's up to you how you do that. So here's the wing that's more rounded off, and then a wing that has more points, a lot more detail cutting on it, and then there's the body and tail as well. So all the parts are sewn. For the leg wire, I'm twisting and twisting and twisting. This is going to go up into the body and be the legs and one of the toes. A lot of twisting to make it stronger, and then just bend those little ends down, and I'm using electrical tape to cover those sharp ends so they don't ever poke through the body. You could use a different kind of tape too. And then that goes up into the body, and that'll give us a nice stable bird. I've got about 3 inches of wire hanging off each side, and then I'm taking about 1 1/4 inch and bend it to make like the ankle area. So that's going to be one of the toes. And then these are little 12-inch pieces of wire, and I'm showing how you shape that. I'm doing 1.5 inches for each toe. That's 1.5 inches each time. There are lots of ways to make bird feet. This is just the way that I'm showing it. There are other ways you could use as well. Twist each one of those toes. Just a little twist there, and then place that on the leg area. Bend those wires around the leg, and then just use some electrical tape or other tape to go ahead and attach those two together. Floral tape covers the wired feet and legs and gives it a nice texture, like it actually kind of looks like scaly bird skin. There's no trick to doing this, just wrap them all and get it really tightly around that. Stretch that floral tape so it's tight. You want to stuff the bird pretty firmly in the beak and the head, and also in the body. It doesn't need to be super firm because you don't want to stretch it out too much. The tail has that little triangular shape that matches up with the quilting lines. I'm using hot glue here. You could also hand stitch, and you'll see the ladder stitch in the next segment. I'm just gluing the bottom on first, and then a fine bead of glue. You need a detailed tip on your glue gun or glue bottle for that. And then just go ahead and do top and bottom, and that closes up the bird. I'm going to go ahead and put a wire through the flying bird wing. So I've got a little hole poked on both sides of the bird body right around the placement line, and I've put my wire through. It's got loops on each end so it's not sharp, and then just put the wings on and hand stitch using the ladder stitch. You've got a diagram in your instructions, and this is how that works. A little 1/8 of an inch stitch in the wing, and just fold those edges under, and another 1/8 inch stitch in the body. And each time you go from body to wing or wing to body, you just go straight across, parallel, like railroad tracks. I'll show you a few stitches of that. Each stitch is just a little bite of fabric. If you need to poke that wing under so that it folds nicely, you can use your needle for that. And then when you pull the threads, it gets nice and snug, and it's an invisible stitch, even with this thick black thread. If you're doing the standing crow, you just ladder stitch the wings on. They're much easier. Here's how I like to do the eyes. I've got a double strand of thread, and I go through the head and come back out the same hole and run my thread in the loop. And now I've got a nice tight loop there on both sides. Put one bead on and just go through. So you need a needle that's long enough to go through the bird's head. Put the other bead on. I mean, it's really that simple. And then I come out underneath that first bead. Make sure it's not all looped and tangled. And then just take a little stitch under that first eye, and I'll show you the surface knot. Make a loop on the right, pass your needle through that. Gives you a loop on the left, pass your needle through, and then use your needle to hold the thread up as you pull, and it goes right down to the surface with the knot. And then just pass your needle into the body a couple of inches and come out so we can clip the threads and it disappears inside. For the thighs, there is a 5-inch piece of fabric that's 1 inch on one side, 1/2 inch on the other. There's also a pattern available in your instructions. And just glue that. You want the flat side of that triangular piece, for whatever it's called, up against the body so that as you wrap it, it coils around and it gets thicker at the top. You can either hand stitch this in place or use glue. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure your fabric covers that hole in the body. And now we've got a finished crow, whether you made the standing crow, the flying crow, both of them, a whole murder of them. Here's what they look like. You could also mix and match body parts. I've got flying crow wings on the standing crow body and legs in that crow in front, and that's a nice look too. I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions about how to do these patterns, you can contact me through the website ballyhoocreations.com. We also have a Facebook group called Ballyhoo Inspiration and Support, where you can go in there, join the group, and ask questions of what you're working on there too. So we'll be happy to help you out.